I will defend him!
A Monday morning in the federal courthouse of Manhattan, the courtroom erupted when the notorious Korean Mafia boss, Do-hyun, stood alone. His high-priced legal team, bought and threatened by a rival syndicate, had vanished into the morning fog just minutes before the trial. Do-hyun sat in an orange jumpsuit, his composure shattering before dozens of hungry cameras as he realized the system was about to swallow him whole. The judge, a man with a hidden ledger of blood on his hands, raised his gavel to seal Do-hyun's fate forever. Then, a voice, clear and defiant, cut through the silence. The woman in the stained apron, standing by the back wall with a serving tray of half-eaten sandwiches, stepped forward into the light. Ariana Vance looked at the cameras, then at the man in chains, and said, "I will defend him, even if it kills me." The room froze. No one knew this waitress was once a legal genius, a sleeping giant buried in the cafeteria for 15 years after the system murdered her father. But what made her risk her life to step into the light at that exact moment? The coffee scalded Ariana's wrist as the businessman in the custom suit shoved the cup back across the counter. "You call this service?" His breath reeked of cigars and entitlement. "My intern makes better coffee than this trash." She didn't flinch, though her father's voice echoed in her skull. "Never let them see you bleed." But he'd bled plenty when they found him in that alley 15 years ago, hadn't he? The courthouse cafeteria hummed with the usual Monday chaos, prosecutors trading war stories, defense attorneys rehearsing their opening statements. Ariana refilled sugar dispensers and pretended not to hear the legal arguments she could dismantle in her sleep. The stained apron was her armor now, the tray of sandwiches her shield. As long as she stayed invisible, Maya stayed safe. Then the doors burst open, and chains rattled against marble. Do-hyun moved like a man walking to his execution, orange jumpsuit stark against his olive skin. His eyes swept the room, not searching for sympathy, but calculating who would watch him die. Those eyes locked onto Ariana's for half a heartbeat, and something ancient stirred in her chest. Recognition. Maybe. Or warning. The gallery filled with reporters, their cameras hungry. Ariana's hands trembled as she wiped down tables, moving closer to the courtroom doors. She shouldn't care. She'd buried that part of herself with her father. Judge Brennan's voice boomed through the speakers. "Where is the defense counsel?" Silence. Do-hyun's head dropped. Then his entire legal team, 6 attorneys in $1,000 suits, stood as one and walked out. Just walked out, leaving their client alone in chains while the cameras devoured his humiliation. The lead attorney didn't even look back. Ariana's tray clattered to the floor. She knew that walk. The syndicate signature, the kind of exit that said "we own you now." The same exit her father's colleagues had made the night before his murder, when he'd refused to throw a case for Judge Brennan. The gavel rose. "Mr. Park, without counsel, I have no choice but to wait." Ariana's voice cut through the courtroom like broken glass. Every head turned. She stepped through the doors, apron still tied around her waist, and the prosecutor's face drained of color. Marcus Webb. The man who'd fabricated evidence to disbar her, who'd smiled at her father's funeral while his killers stood in the back row. "I will defend him," she said, each word costing her something she'd never get back. Judge Brennan's laugh was acid. "You? A waitress? I'll hold you in contempt before you finish your first sentence." Ariana reached into her apron pocket and slammed her bar license onto the defense table. Active. Current. The license she'd maintained in secret for 15 years, paying dues with tips and prayers. "Then hold me in contempt, Your Honor. But I'm still his attorney." The courtroom exploded. Cameras flashed like lightning. Webb lunged forward, but Do-hyun's chains rattled as he stood, his eyes meeting hers again. This time, she saw something worse than gratitude. She saw hope. 3 hours later, Ariana's apartment door hung open like a broken jaw. Furniture gutted. Her mother's photos shredded across the floor. And Maya's favorite doll, the one their mother had sewn by hand before the illness took her, pinned to the kitchen door with a hunting knife. "Maya." Her voice cracked. A whimper from the cabinet under the sink. Ariana's knees hit the linoleum. She pulled the cabinet open and Maya fell into her arms, 7 years old and shaking so hard her teeth chattered. No words. Just that animal sound children make when the world stops making sense. The bloody note was taped to Maya's forehead. "Stay in the kitchen, girl." Ariana held her sister and felt the last 15 years of hiding turn to ash in her hands. She'd stepped into the light to save a stranger. And now they were both going to burn. The motel clerk didn't ask questions when Ariana paid cash for room 7, but his eyes lingered on Maya's tear-streaked face long enough to make her skin crawl. She locked the door, shoved the dresser against it, and pulled Maya onto the sagging mattress that smelled like cigarettes and decades of desperation. "Why can't we go home?" Maya's voice was small, broken in a way that made Ariana's throat close. "Because home doesn't exist anymore. Because the monsters found us. Because I destroyed everything the moment I opened my mouth in that courtroom. We're on an adventure," Ariana whispered, smoothing Maya's hair. The same lie their mother had told when they'd moved into the cramped apartment after their father died. The same lie that had kept them alive for 15 years. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, room 7. Cute choice. Ariana's stomach turned to ice. They'd been here less than an hour. She grabbed Maya and bolted for the bathroom window, but headlights flooded the parking lot outside. 3 cars. No plates. Engines idling like predators waiting to pounce. Her phone buzzed again. "Relax. Just wanted you to know we're watching." She threw the phone against the wall, watched it shatter. But the damage was done. They'd been tracking her. Which meant the police were involved, because only cops had that kind of access. The same cops who'd ruled her father's death an accident. Morning came with iron bars and fluorescent lights. The federal detention center smelled like industrial cleaner and broken promises. Do-Hyun sat behind bulletproof glass, his face a canvas of purple and yellow bruises that bloomed across his jaw and disappeared beneath his collar. Prison guards. Ariana's pen hovered over her legal pad. Creative ones. Do-Hyun's smile didn't reach his eyes. "They wanted to know where I hid the money from the heist. Funny thing, I keep telling them I never touched that money because I wasn't there. The evidence says otherwise. Evidence can be bought." He leaned forward, chains rattling. The heist was a cover. Ariana. They needed a distraction loud enough that no one would notice Senator Kowalski's chief of staff dying in his sleep that same night. The pen slipped from her fingers. A political assassination. Staged to look like a heart attack. Kowalski was about to expose a trafficking ring that runs through every level of government. His chief of staff knew everything. Do-Hyun's voice dropped to gravel. "I was supposed to be at that gala that night. They framed me to keep me from talking. You're Mafia. Why would you expose?" "I was trying to get out." His knuckles whitened against the table. "I have information that could burn this entire city to ash. That's why they want me dead." Before Ariana could respond, a guard thrust a manila envelope through the door. "This just came for you, counselor." The Bar Association letterhead made her hand shake. Emergency motion to revoke her license based on credible psychiatric concerns. Attached were hospital records, falsified, detailed, describing a mental breakdown she'd never had and medications she'd never taken. "How?" Her voice barely worked. Do-Hyun's eyes darkened. "They did this to your father too, didn't they? Before they killed him." The memory hit like a fist. Her father's frantic calls about fabricated evidence, his insistence that Marcus Webb was manufacturing a case against him. 3 days later, he was dead in an alley, and the official report said he'd been drinking. Her father, who hadn't touched alcohol since her mother's diagnosis. Her phone, the burner she'd bought at the gas station, buzzed. Her bank's fraud alert, account frozen pending investigation. Available balance, $14.23. $14. Maya needed food. Medicine. Safety. Things that cost more than Ariana's life was apparently worth. "There's a pawn shop 2 blocks from the courthouse," Do-Hyun said quietly. "Tell them Do-Hyun sent you. They'll treat you fair." The wedding ring felt like lead in her pocket as she walked into Lou's Pawn and Loan. Her mother's only treasure, a thin gold band with an inscription so worn Ariana could barely read it anymore. Forever, no matter what. Her father had saved for 6 months to buy it. Lou counted out $43 in 5s and 1s without meeting her eyes. Ariana bought day-old sandwiches and a bottle of children's Tylenol for Maya's fever. The change jingled in her pocket, $11.16 between them and the street. The explosion threw her to the pavement before she heard the sound. Her car, the 15-year-old Honda that barely ran, erupted in flames in the courthouse parking lot, glass raining down like deadly snow. Security guards sprinted past her, shouting into radios. But Ariana couldn't move, couldn't breathe, because she saw the signature in the blast pattern. Professional. Military grade. The kind of bomb that required authorization to acquire. Her eyes traveled up to the courthouse windows, and there he was, Judge Brennan, watching from his chambers. Not shocked. Not concerned. Just watching to see if she'd survived. His phone was pressed to his ear. Giving orders. Signing hits. A security guard pulled her to her feet, asking if she was hurt, but his words felt distant and hollow. Because Ariana understood now with perfect, terrible clarity, this wasn't about Do-hyun's case. This wasn't about the heist or the assassination or even the Mafia. This was about her father. About the case he'd refused to throw 15 years ago. About the corruption he'd threatened to expose. They'd killed him for it. And now they were finishing what they started. Do-hyun hadn't just hired a lawyer. He'd hired the one person whose destruction would satisfy an old debt. The judge wasn't trying to silence Do-hyun. He was trying to erase the last witness to her father's murder, and he'd use Maya's life to make sure Ariana stayed silent this time. The courthouse security guard's nose wrinkled as Ariana passed through the metal detector, her borrowed blouse reeking of smoke and her hair singed at the ends from the car bomb's heat. She'd slept in her clothes on the motel bathroom floor with Maya locked in her arms, and every eye in the corridor tracked her like she was something feral that had wandered in from the street. Marcus Webb smiled when he saw her. Rough night, counselor. Where's the file? Her voice came out steady despite the tremor in her hands. The original heist investigation. I've requested it 3 times. Lost in the system. His smile widened. Tragic, really. But she'd seen the filing cabinet in Judge Brennan's chambers yesterday. The one with the military-grade lock that didn't belong in a federal courthouse. The one with a label that read Park Investigation. Sealed. Her phone, another burner, buzzed. The motel manager. Your sister's burning up. Needs a doctor. Ariana's chest constricted. She'd called every clinic within 5 miles. Every single one. The moment they heard her name, the line went dead. Someone had blacklisted her, which meant someone had reached into every medical facility in the city. The courtroom doors burst open. A federal marshal, his face ashen. Your Honor, we have a situation. Do-hyun Park's sister was found dead in her apartment an hour ago. Apparent overdose. Do-hyun's roar shattered the proceedings. He lunged across the defense table, chain snapping taut, his face twisted into something inhuman. She didn't use. She never. His voice broke. Cracked. Bled. Ariana grabbed his arm, felt the tremors running through him like an earthquake. Attorney room. Now. The guards dragged them both into the small conference room, and the moment the door closed, Do-hyun's legs gave out. He collapsed against the wall, and Ariana caught him, held him as sobs tore from his chest, ugly, animal sounds that reminded her of the night she'd identified her father's body. They killed her to break me. His words came between gasps. Ji-woo never touched drugs. Never. She was studying to be a pediatrician. Ariana's arms tightened around him. I know. I know. No, you don't. He pulled back, his eyes red and raw. Your father died quick. They're making me watch everyone I love die slow. The door opened. Marcus Webb stood in the threshold, and behind him, impossibly, Ariana saw it. The silver watch on his wrist. Her father's watch, the one that had been missing from his body when they found him. The one with the inscription on the back, For Vincent, who never quits. Her vision tunneled. Where did you get that watch? Webb's hand moved to cover it, but the damage was done. What watch? The one you took off my father's wrist after you killed him. Her voice didn't sound like her own anymore. The one he was wearing when you beat him to death in that alley. Careful, Miss Vance. Baseless accusations can end careers. But his face had gone pale, and his hand trembled as he adjusted his cufflink over the watch face. A bailiff appeared behind Webb. Delivery for Miss Vance. Maya's backpack. The pink one with the unicorn patch that Ariana had sewn on after the original logo had worn away. It sat on the attorney table like a bomb, and inside, she knew without looking, would be something to remind her that Maya was never safe, never out of reach. Ariana's lungs forgot how to work. The bathroom stall door slammed behind her as her knees hit the tile, her breakfast coming up in acidic waves. Her hands shook so badly she couldn't grip the toilet seat. Her father's face flashed behind her eyes, his broken body on that metal slab, the autopsy photos they'd forced her to identify him with because his face had been beaten beyond recognition. And Maya. Sweet Maya, who still drew pictures of their father as an angel, who still asked when he was coming home. You dropped this. The janitor, an older black woman with kind eyes, pressed something into Ariana's palm. A key. Small, brass, with an evidence locker number etched into the metal. Why? Ariana's voice scraped. Because I cleaned your daddy's blood off that courtroom floor 15 years ago. The woman's jaw set. And I'm done pretending I didn't see who put it there. The evidence locker smelled like dust and forgotten crimes. Ariana's hands trembled as she opened box 2847, her father's case file. And there, paper-clipped to the accident report that had closed his case, was a photo. Her father. Beaten. Blooded. And standing over him, clear as day in the background, Marcus Webb and Judge Brennan, both in frame, both watching. Both smiling. Do-Hyun's body went rigid in the witness box, his eyes rolling back as the seizure took him. Ariana vaulted the barrier, catching his head before it cracked against the wood, her fingers pressed to his convulsing jaw as foam gathered at the corners of his mouth. Medical emergency. Judge Brennan's gavel cracked, but Ariana barely heard it over the sound of Do-Hyun's teeth grinding, over the terrible quiet that followed when his body finally went still. The paramedics rushed in, but Do-Hyun's hand shot out, gripping Ariana's wrist with desperate strength. His lips moved, forming words only she could hear. Don't tell them. Please. The hospital bracelet on his other wrist told the story his mouth wouldn't. Oncology ward, stage 4 glioblastoma, estimated time remaining, weeks, maybe days. He was dying, had been dying long before the trial started, and suddenly every risk he'd taken made horrifying sense. How long have you known? Ariana's voice fractured as they wheeled him back into the courtroom in a wheelchair, and 4 drip hanging like a noose. 8 months. His smile was ghost-thin. The Mafia doesn't have a retirement plan, Ariana. But dying in prison. His hand trembled. That's a mercy compared to what they'll do to the people I love if I don't die innocent. The orphanages. She'd found the financial records that morning, buried in the discovery documents. His entire empire, every dollar, every asset, funneled into children's homes across 3 states. You're not what they say you are. I was. Once. His eyes were hollow. But you can't wash blood off with good deeds. You just die trying. Detective Morrison took the stand, his uniform crisp, his testimony practiced. The heist occurred at 11:47 p.m., corroborated by security footage. Ariana stood. That footage was edited. The metadata shows a 3-minute gap at 11:44. Morrison's jaw tightened. Technical glitch. Technical glitch, or enough time to remove footage of the real thieves. She approached the stand, and Morrison's hand moved instinctively to his service weapon. A tell. Who ordered you to alter it, detective? Your Honor, this is harassment. But Brennan was smiling. Overruled. Answer the question, detective. Morrison's eyes flicked to the gallery, and Ariana followed his gaze. The courtroom had filled with men in identical black suits, their faces blank, their presence a promise. The syndicate, sitting in judgment. Her phone vibrated. The motel manager, your sister's temperature is 104. She's asking for you. Ariana's hands went numb. Maya needed her. Needed a hospital. But leaving meant giving Brennan an excuse to declare a mistrial, to destroy Do-Hyun while Ariana wasn't there to stop it. I need a recess. Her voice came out strangled. Denied. Brennan's smile widened. Continue your cross-examination or sit down. Do-Hyun leaned close, his breath rattling. Go. I'll make them wait. They'll crucify you. I'm already dead. His hand found hers under the table. But if you stay and Maya dies? You'll never forgive yourself. I know. I watched my sister die yesterday because I couldn't leave this chair. Ariana ran. Sprinted through the courthouse corridors, her heart a hammer in her chest, but when she reached the motel, Maya was gone. Checked out by her mother an hour ago, the clerk said. A woman with kind eyes and a reassuring smile who'd promised to take her to a doctor. Ariana didn't have a mother. Her mother had been dead for 12 years. The manila envelope was taped to the motel room door. Inside, a flash drive and a note in Do-Hyun's handwriting. Death pact, If I die, everything I own becomes yours and Maya's. If you die, she gets it all. Either way, she's protected. The flash drive contained a single audio file. Her father's voice, recorded on the night he died. If you're hearing this, Vincent Vance is dead. Judge Brennan and Marcus Webb killed me for refusing to throw the Castellano case. They offered me money, then threats, then a crash. Shouting. Her father's scream cut short. Then Webb's voice, crystal clear, make it look like a drunk. No one will question it. Ariana's legs gave out. 15 years she'd wondered. 15 years she'd lived with the official story, the whispers that her brilliant father had thrown his life away in an alley over a bottle. The courtroom spun when she returned. Brennan denied every motion she filed, evidence suppression, witness tampering, prosecutorial misconduct. Each denial punctuated with a laugh, a casual flick of his wrist that said, I own you. Your Honor, I have new evidence that. Denied. But you haven't even looked at. Denied. His gavel came down like an executioner's blade. Sit down, Miss Vance, before I have you removed. The elevator doors closed behind her as the day's session ended. Ariana sagged against the wall, every muscle screaming. Then the emergency stop button clicked, and a man in black emerged from the corner she'd thought was empty. The suppressor on his gun caught the fluorescent light. Nothing personal, he said, and raised the weapon. Just business. Ariana's finger found the emergency call button a heartbeat before the suppressor fired, and the bullet sparked off metal as the elevator lurched into motion. The hitman lunged, but the doors opened to a crowd of reporters, their cameras already flashing, and he melted back into the shadows like he'd never existed. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking as she stumbled into the parking garage, where a black Mercedes idled with its headlights off. The rear window lowered, revealing a man whose face she'd only seen in FBI surveillance photos, Victor Vane, the syndicate leader who'd ordered hits on 3 senators and walked away whistling. Get in, Miss Vance. We need to chat. The interior smelled like leather and old money. Vane poured scotch into a crystal glass, didn't offer her one. You have 24 hours to lose this case. Gracefully. A mistrial would be elegant. Or perhaps a sudden crisis of conscience about defending criminals. And if I don't? Then Maya disappears. He showed her a photo on his phone, her sister, sleeping in a bed Ariana didn't recognize, for drip in her arm, surrounded by medical equipment. She's receiving excellent care, by the way. Fever's down. But accidents happen in hospitals. Medications get mixed up. Children stop breathing. The copper taste of blood flooded her mouth where she'd bitten through her lip. Where is she? Somewhere safe. Somewhere you'll never find. Vane's smile was surgical. But she comes home the moment Do-Hyun Park is convicted. 24 hours. Counselor. Choose wisely. The detention center visiting room reeked of disinfectant and despair. Do-Hyun looked smaller somehow, his orange jumpsuit hanging loose on a frame that had shed 20 pounds in 2 weeks. The seizure medication made his hands tremble as he tried to drink water. They have Maya. Ariana's voice cracked. They want me to throw the case. Then throw it. No hesitation. No debate. I'm dead anyway, Ariana. The tumor, the trial, it's all just theater. But Maya. His eyes glistened. She gets to grow up. She gets to be something other than another casualty of this war. I can't just. Yes, you can. He reached across the table, his cuffed hands covering hers. Your father died fighting corruption. Don't let his granddaughter die because you're too stubborn to quit. A guard brought them dinner, 2 trays of prison food that looked like it had been scraped off a highway. Salisbury steak that wasn't steak, mashed potatoes that weren't potatoes. Do-Hyun pushed his tray toward the center of the table, arranged it like they were at a restaurant. First date I've had in 3 years, he said, forcing lightness into his voice. Pretty sure prison doesn't count as a date. Depends on your standards. He lifted his water cup like it was champagne. To impossible choices and the women brave enough to make them. Ariana's throat closed. This dying man, this supposed monster, was trying to comfort her while she decided whether to destroy him. Do-Hyun. Don't. He stood, chains rattling, and leaned across the table. His lips found hers, gentle and desperate and tasting like goodbye. When he pulled back, His eyes were wet. "That's so you remember I chose this. Not you. Me." But Ariana had made her choice hours ago, when she'd let the FBI agent wire her up in the courthouse bathroom. When she'd walked into Vane's car knowing every word would be recorded. The device itched against her ribs as Do-hyun sat back down, as the moment shattered into something she could never get back. The files arrived at midnight, an anonymous email dump that crashed her laptop. Supreme Court Justice Marquez bank records, showing deposits that matched the heist money to the dollar. The dates aligned perfectly, the money stolen, the money deposited, the ruling that had declared the city's anti-corruption task force unconstitutional. The heist hadn't been about money. It had been about buying a Supreme Court justice to kill the investigation that would have exposed them all. Her phone buzzed. An unknown number. "Maya wants to talk to you." Her sister's voice was drowsy, drugged. "Ari? When's Daddy coming home?" "What?" Ariana's chest constricted. "Maya, what?" "Daddy Do-hyun. He said he'd read me stories when the trial's done. He promised." A yawn. "Tell him I miss him, okay?" The line went dead. Ariana stared at her phone, at the little girl who'd lost one father and adopted another in the space of a courtroom. Do-hyun, the man who'd never had children, who was dying alone in a cell, had become the father Maya needed. And now Ariana had to choose which one to save. The knock on her motel door made her jump. A courier in a suit, holding a box wrapped in expensive paper. From Preston and Associates. Your old firm. Inside, a check for $500,000 and a note. Walk away. Stay silent. Start over somewhere safe. Ariana's hands didn't shake as she walked to the courthouse steps where the morning news crews were setting up. Didn't shake as she held the check up to the cameras, let them zoom in on the number, on the signature of the senior partner who'd abandoned her father 15 years ago. "This is what they think justice costs," she said, her voice carrying across the plaza. $500,000 to let a dying man take the fall for their crimes. $500,000 to forget my father was murdered. $500,000 to abandon a little girl who just wants her daddy to come home. She pulled out her lighter, the one her father had carried, the one that had survived in the evidence locker, and touched flame to paper. The check burned bright and fast, ashes scattering like snow across the courthouse steps as the cameras captured every second. Behind the press line, she saw Victor Vane's Mercedes pull away, saw the tinted window lower just enough for him to meet her eyes. His smile promised death. But Ariana was already dead inside, had been since the moment Do-hyun kissed her goodbye. Now she was just choosing which ghost to become. The FBI agent handed Ariana a key to the safe house with dead eyes. Witness protection. You and your client's family. 24-hour surveillance. Family. Maya had been returned an hour after the check burned, delivered to the courthouse steps like a package, still groggy from sedatives but alive. And now she clung to Do-hyun's hand as they entered the penthouse, calling him daddy in a voice that made his dying face crack open with something that looked like hope. The windows overlooked the city like a promise. Or a target. Why does it feel like a cage? Ariana's fingers traced the bulletproof glass. Because it is. Do-hyun settled Maya on the couch, tucking a blanket around her with hands that shook from more than medication. They're not protecting us. They're containing us. The first bullet shattered the illusion and the window simultaneously. Glass exploded inward as high-caliber rounds punched through the bulletproof facade, and Ariana threw herself over Maya as Do-hyun flipped the couch. The little girl's scream cut through the chaos, through the sound of wood splintering and plaster raining down like deadly snow. The dumb waiter. Do-hyun shoved Maya toward the kitchen. Now. Ariana crawled across broken glass, her palms leaving bloody prints as she pulled Maya into the tiny service elevator. Don't make a sound. Not one. Maya's eyes were too wide, too knowing. 7 years old and learning what her sister had learned at 12, that the world was full of monsters, and some of them wore badges. The closet door hung half open. Ariana dove inside as boots thundered across the threshold, as men in tactical gear swept through with rifles that cost more than her education. Her laptop, miraculously intact, glowed in her lap as she typed with trembling hands, drafting the legal brief that would either save them or serve as a suicide note. Motion to compel evidence. Every name. Every bribe. Every murder. The words poured out like blood from a wound that had been festering for 15 years. Do-hyun's voice cut through, "She's not here. The woman's not." The gunshot made Ariana's ears ring. She watched through the crack in the door as Do-hyun staggered, his hand pressed to his side where blood bloomed across his orange prison transport uniform. He'd put himself between the assassins and the dumbwaiter shaft. Between the bullets and Maya. Basement. Check the basement. The lead assassin's voice was clinical, bored. They moved like ghosts, professional and silent, and Do-hyun collapsed against the wall the moment they descended. Ariana burst from the closet, her hands trying to stop the blood that pulsed between his fingers with each heartbeat. Maya, he gasped. Safe. Her voice shattered. You're losing too much blood. Had to. His smile was crimson. She calls me Daddy, Ariana. No one's ever. His eyes rolled back. Her laptop pinged. The cloud backup had completed, and there it was, the document she'd been hunting for 6 chapters, 6 lifetimes. Judge Brennan's offshore account, linked directly to the heist money, linked to her father's murder, linked to a conspiracy that reached into the Supreme Court itself. The smoking gun. Finally. FBI tactical units swarmed the penthouse with a precision that made Ariana's stomach turn. They stepped over bodies, assassins shot by their own crossfire, and went straight for Do-hyun. He needs a hospital. Ariana blocked their path. He needs a cell. Agent Morrison, the same detective who'd lied about the timestamp, cuffed Do-hyun's wrists as he bled. Do-hyun Park, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, weapons charges, and assaulting a federal officer. He was shot protecting us. Funny how the only witness is his lawyer. Morrison's smile was knife-thin. Your laptop, Miss Vance. Evidence. That's attorney-client. He ripped it from her hands. Not anymore. They dragged Do-hyun out on a stretcher, still cuffed, still bleeding, and Ariana stood in a penthouse full of shattered glass and bullet holes, Maya's small hand finding hers in the wreckage. The dumbwaiter door creaked open. Her sister emerged, silent tears cutting tracks through the dust on her face. Is Daddy dead? No. But Ariana's voice held no conviction. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Thanks for the files. Morrison. The rescue had never been about saving them. It had been about stealing her evidence before she could file it. The smoking gun was gone, seized by the same corrupt system that had created it, and Do-hyun was being dragged to a hospital that would probably finish what the assassin started. Ariana sank to her knees in the broken glass, her father's lighter somehow still in her pocket, and realized she'd lost everything. Again. The thrift store gown cost $43, the exact amount Loose Pawn had given her for her mother's wedding ring, and it smelled faintly of mothballs and someone else's perfume. Ariana pulled it on in the bathroom of a gas station, her reflection a stranger in cracked glass, and practiced her smile until it looked like something other than a scream. The Manhattan Grand Hotel dripped with crystal and corruption. Every judge, every senator, every lawyer who'd built their career on the bones of people like her father sipped champagne under chandeliers that cost more than a life. The charity gala's banner read, Justice for All. The irony tasted like copper. Judge Brennan held court near the bar, his laughter booming across marble floors, his hand resting possessively on the arm of a blonde woman young enough to be his daughter. He didn't see Ariana until she was standing in front of him, until the music swelled and she extended her hand. May I have this dance, Your Honor? His face went slack. Then curious. Then amused. Miss Vance. I didn't realize they let the help attend these functions. They don't. She smiled, and something in it made him take her hand. But I've always been good at crashing parties. The waltz carried them across the floor, and Ariana leaned close enough to smell the scotch on his breath, the same brand her father used to drink before Brennan murdered him. I know about the $50,000. The bribe my father refused. The one that got him killed. Brennan's grip tightened enough to bruise. Careful, counselor. Slander is actionable. So is murder. Her voice stayed soft, conversational, while her heart hammered against her ribs. Marcus Webb wore my father's watch to court yesterday. The one he took off his wrist after he beat him to death in that alley. Did you keep a trophy too, or did watching suffice? His smile never wavered, but his hand trembled against her waist. You're unwell, Miss Vance. The stress of the trial has clearly broken me. She laughed, and heads turned. You've been trying to break me for 15 years. But here I am, still dancing. Marcus Webb materialized at Brennan's shoulder, his face a thundercloud. Your Honor, perhaps you'd like me to. Remove her. Ariana spun away from Brennan, her voice carrying across the ballroom. The prosecutor wants to silence a defense attorney at a charity event? How very transparent, Marcus. Cameras turned. Phones rose. The society reporters who'd been documenting champagne toasts suddenly had something worth recording. She's clearly intoxicated, Webb hissed, reaching for her arm. Ariana stumbled, deliberately, perfectly, spilling her water glass across Brennan's jacket. Oh God, I'm so sorry. Her hands patted at his chest, his pockets, and when she pulled back, his encrypted phone was tucked against her palm. Let me get you some napkins. She fled toward the bathroom before they could stop her, before Webb's hand could close around her wrist, and locked herself in a stall with shaking hands. The phone screen lit up, 3 missed calls from Morrison, 2 texts from a contact labeled only V. Vane. The bathroom door crashed open. Miss Vance, you need to return Judge Brennan's property immediately. But Ariana was already forwarding files to her backup email. Photos, texts, voice memos that detailed every bribe, every threat, every murder. Her father's name appeared in a message thread dated 15 years ago. VV refuses to cooperate. Permanent solution required. $50,000. Her father had died over $50,000 because he wouldn't throw a case that would have freed a child trafficker. Her phone buzzed. An unknown number with a video attachment. Do-Hyun, strapped to a chair in what looked like a prison basement, his face a mask of blood and bruises. A voice off camera. Sign the confession or we move to the pretty parts. Do-Hyun's broken smile found the camera. Tell Ariana. A fist cut off his words. The video ended. Ariana's legs gave out. She sank to the tile floor, Brennan's phone still clutched in her hand, and understood with perfect clarity. Her waitress life hadn't been cowardice. It had been survival. The moment she'd stepped into that courtroom, she'd painted a target on everyone she loved. Maya was back at the motel, watched by the one person Ariana trusted, the janitor who'd given her the evidence locker key. But even thinking about her sister made Ariana's chest constrict, because Maya had started flinching at the sight of men in suits, started wetting the bed, started asking questions about heaven that no 7-year-old should know to ask. Security pounded on the bathroom door. Last warning, Miss Vance. She opened her laptop, the backup she'd hidden in her ancient briefcase, and began typing. The motion would end her career, would probably end her life, but it was the only weapon she had left, a formal complaint naming Judge Brennan, Marcus Webb, Detective Morrison, and 18 other officials in a conspiracy spanning 15 years. Every name. Every crime. Every piece of evidence she compiled while wearing that stained apron, while pouring coffee for the men who destroyed her family. The door splintered. Security dragged her out into the ballroom, and Brennan stood waiting, his hand extended for his phone. Looking for this. Ariana held it up. The entire ballroom could see the screen, could see the text message displayed, VV payment confirmed. Make it look like an accident. Her father's initials. The night he died. Cameras flashed like lightning as Ariana dropped the phone and raised her hands. Arrest me if you want. But those files are already uploaded. Already sent to every news outlet in the city. Brennan's face went white. Then purple. Then he smiled, the same smile he'd worn in that evidence locker photo, standing over her father's body. You just committed career suicide, Miss Vance. I know. Her voice didn't shake. But I learned from the best. My father chose death over corruption. She met his eyes. I choose the same. The courtroom air tasted like a coming storm. Every seat filled, every camera trained on Ariana as she stood in a borrowed suit. Her gala gown had been torn during her arrest, with Maya sitting in the front row, clutching the janitor's hand like a lifeline. Do-Hyun slumped at the defense table, his face a patchwork of torture, breathing through cracked ribs that hadn't been cracked 3 days ago. Ariana's voice cut through the silence like a blade. The defense calls Judge Richard Brennan as a hostile witness. The gallery erupted. Brennan's gavel came down like thunder, but Ariana was already approaching the bench, already holding up the subpoena she'd filed at 3 in the morning from a courthouse library computer. You can't. Brennan's face went crimson. This is unprecedented. Improper. So is murder, Your Honor. She turned to the jury. But if you're innocent, surely you have nothing to hide. The federal marshal stationed at the door shifted uncomfortably. The reporters leaned forward. And Brennan, trapped by his own courtroom, his own rules, stepped down from the bench with murder in his eyes. "This won't end well for you, Miss Vance." "It already hasn't." She gestured to the witness stand. "Please, sit." His jaw worked as he settled into the chair where dozens of witnesses had been destroyed by his contempt. Now the tables had turned, and the hunter was prey. Ariana held up her phone. "Your Honor, I'd like to play Exhibit 47A for the court." "Objection." Webb surged to his feet. "Foundation has not been established." The audio file played before he could finish. Her father's voice, young and vital and alive. "If you're hearing this, Vincent Vance is dead. Judge Brennan and Marcus Webb killed me for refusing to throw the Castellano case. They offered me money, then threats, then the crash, the scream, then Webb's voice, crystal clear, 'Make it look like a drunk. No one will question it.'" The courtroom went silent. Maya's sob cut through the quiet like a knife. Brennan's knuckles whitened on the witness stand rail. "That recording is fabricated. Clearly edited." "By whom?" Ariana stepped closer. "My father, who somehow predicted his own murder. Or perhaps you'd like to explain how your voice appears on it, discussing the exact method used to kill him." Webb launched himself over the prosecution table, his hands reaching for Ariana's throat. Duhyun moved, impossibly fast for a dying man in chains, and his shoulder caught Webb's chest. They crashed to the floor in a tangle of limbs and handcuffs, and Duhyun coughed blood onto the marble as Webb's elbow found his ribs. "Daddy!" Maya's scream tore through the chaos. The gallery exploded. People standing, shouting, phones raised to capture the prosecutor trying to murder the defense attorney while the judge watched from the witness stand. The chant started in the back row, spread like wildfire. "Arrest him! Arrest him! Arrest him!" Then the lights died. Gunfire cracked through the darkness, not aimed, just chaos, just the syndicate making sure no one walked out of this courtroom alive. Ariana hit the floor, crawling toward Maya's voice, toward the little girl who was screaming for Duhyun while bullets sparked off marble and wood. Emergency lights flickered on. Court officers surrounded Ariana, and one of them, Morrison's partner, she recognized him now, held her bar license in his hands. "By order of Judge Brennan, your license to practice law is hereby revoked." He tore it in half. Then in quarters. Let the pieces fall like snow onto Duhyun's blood. "You can't practice without." "Then I'll proceed as a friend of the court." Ariana's voice carried across the wreckage. "A citizen seeking justice. You can revoke my license, but you can't revoke the truth." She pulled herself to her feet, glass embedded in her palms, and faced the jury. Half of them were crying. All of them were listening. The heist wasn't about money. Her words came faster now, desperate, final. It was about insurance fraud. The armored car company, owned by shell corporations linked to Judge Brennan. The stolen art, already sold 6 months prior. The entire heist was staged to collect $30 million in insurance payouts while framing Duhyun Park, the one man who had evidence of their real crime. She slammed down bank records, shipping manifests, emails that showed the art leaving the country before the heist ever occurred. Evidence she compiled while they'd been torturing Duhyun in prison, while they'd been hunting Maya, while they'd been destroying everything she loved. "My client is innocent. But more than that, he's the key witness to the largest corruption case this city has ever seen. And they tried to bury him before he could testify." The jury foreman stood. His voice shook but held. "We've reached a verdict." Brennan's gavel came down. "The court is not ready to receive." "Not guilty." The foreman's shout echoed off bullet-scarred walls. "On all charges. Not guilty." The gallery exploded again, but this time with something that sounded like vindication. Like relief. Like justice finally, impossibly breaking through. Brennan's face went white. Then he smiled, that same terrible smile from the evidence photos. "I refuse to accept this verdict. The jury is dismissed, and I'm declaring a mistrial due to. You're under arrest." Federal agents flooded the courtroom, real ones this time, with badges from a jurisdiction higher than Brennan's reach. "Judge Richard Brennan, Marcus Webb, you're both under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, racketeering, and obstruction of justice." They dragged Brennan from the witness stand in handcuffs. Webb screamed about immunity, about procedure, but his voice was drowned by the chanting crowd. Ariana turned to Do-hyun. He lay on the floor, Maya cradled against his chest, his orange jumpsuit soaked through with blood. His eyes found hers, and his broken smile said everything his voice couldn't. We won. But the victory tasted like ash, because Do-hyun's breathing was wrong, too shallow, too wet, and Maya was crying into his chest, begging Daddy not to leave her. And Ariana knew, with the certainty of a woman who'd already lost too much, that winning and surviving were two very different things. The jury foreman's voice echoed through the shattered courtroom one final time. We, the jury, find the defendant Do-hyun Park not guilty on all counts. Ariana spun toward the defense table, her arms already reaching for him, for the man who'd given everything to protect a little girl who wasn't his, who'd endured torture and lies and betrayal for a justice he'd never lived to see. But Do-hyun was slumped forward, his face pressed against the blood-spattered wood, his body motionless except for the terrible, rattling sound of his breathing. Do-hyun. Her hands found his shoulders, shook gently, then desperately. Do-hyun. His eyes opened, barely, and the seizure hit before she could catch him. His body went rigid, convulsing so violently the handcuffs bit into his wrists and drew fresh blood. Foam gathered at his lips, pink-tinged and wrong, so wrong. Medic. Ariana's scream cut through the celebration, through the reporter's chaos, through everything. Someone help him. The paramedics arrived with a stretcher and insufficient urgency. They strapped him down while a federal marshal, even now, even with Brennan in handcuffs, locked Do-hyun's restraints to the gurney rails. He's dying. Ariana grabbed the marshal's arm. He's innocent. The verdict. He's still technically in custody until the paperwork clears. The marshal's face held no emotion. Procedure. They wheeled him away in chains, and Ariana watched the man who'd saved her life, saved Maya's life, saved everything disappear through doors that might as well have been a coffin. Behind her, Brennan's voice rose to a shriek as FBI agents hauled him from the witness stand. You can't do this. I'm a federal judge. I have immunity. I have rights. So did Vincent Vance. The lead agent's voice was granite. So did the 23 other people you've had killed. Move. Webb was sobbing as they dragged him out, his expensive suit torn, his face the color of spoiled meat. The courtroom emptied in a chaos of reporters and spectators and people who'd come to watch a spectacle and witnessed a revolution instead. Ariana stood alone in the wreckage until Maya's small hand found hers. Is Daddy going to die? The question should have come with tears, but Maya's voice was flat, resigned. 7 years old and already learning that love was just another word for loss. I don't know, baby. Ariana's voice cracked. I don't know. The hospital corridor smelled like antiseptic and last chances. Ariana had changed back into her waitress uniform, the only clean clothes she owned, and sat on a plastic chair outside the ICU with Maya's head in her lap. The little girl had finally cried herself into an exhausted sleep, but Ariana's eyes stayed open, fixed on the door that separated her from the man dying on the other side. A nurse emerged at 3:47 a.m. He's asking for you. Both of you. Do-hyun looked smaller in the hospital bed, tubes and wires turning him into something mechanical and fading. But his eyes found Maya's face as Ariana carried her to his bedside, and something like peace settled over his features. Hey, princess. His voice was barely a whisper, each word costing him something he couldn't afford. You came. You promised to read me stories. Maya's hand found his, so tiny against his bruised knuckles. You promised, Daddy. I know. His thumb traced circles on her palm. But you're going to be okay now. Ariana's going to take care of you. She's the best person I've ever met. I don't want her. Maya's voice broke. I want you. Ariana's throat closed as Do-hyun's eyes filled with tears he didn't have the strength to shed. He looked at her over Maya's head, and his free hand fumbled for the documents on the bedside table. The ones his lawyer had brought an hour ago, the ones transferring his entire estate to something called the Vincent Vance Justice Fund. Sign it. His hand shook so badly he could barely hold the pen. Promise me you'll use it to help people like us. People the system tried to bury. Ariana's signature was illegible through her tears. You're going to be fine. The surgery. There is no surgery. His smile was gentle, forgiving. There never was. The tumors in my brain stem. Has been for 8 months. His eyes drifted to Maya. But I got to be a father. Even if just for a little while. That's more than I deserved. The monitors started screaming at 4:01 a.m. Nurses flooded the room, their hands moving with practiced urgency, but Ariana saw the truth in their faces. This wasn't a fight they could win. This was a man's body finally surrendering to the war it had been losing since long before he'd walked into that courtroom in chains. Everyone out. The doctor's voice was sharp, but Do-hyun's hand locked around Ariana's wrist with desperate strength. Stay. Please. She stayed. Held his hand as the monitors flatlined at 4:03 a.m. Held it as his chest stopped rising, as the terrible rattling silence filled the room. Held it even after the doctor called time of death, after they pulled the sheet over his face, after Maya's sobs turned into something animal and broken that no 7-year-old should know how to make. The sunrise found Ariana on the hospital roof, Maya asleep against her chest, the city waking up below them in shades of gold and pink that felt obscene in their beauty. Do-hyun was dead. Her father was avenged but still gone. Brennan and Webb were in custody, but that didn't resurrect the people they'd killed. Justice, she'd learned, was just another word for closing wounds that would never really heal. But the check in her pocket, the first transfer from the Justice Fund, was for $2 million. Enough to give Maya the life she deserved. Enough to help others fight the battles Ariana had barely survived. She walked toward the sunrise with a little girl in her arms and a dead man's final wish tattooed across her heart. Even in darkness, someone had to choose to be light. The brass plaque gleamed in the morning sun, the Do-hyun Park Center for Justice, founded in memory of a man who chose light. Ariana's fingers traced the letters, still disbelieving after a year of construction, of legal battles, of nights when the weight of building something good from so much death felt like drowning. The center stood where her father's old law firm had been, before Preston and Associates had been liquidated, its assets seized, its partners scattered to prisons and obscurity. Poetic justice, some called it. Ariana called it insufficient. Ms. Vance. A young paralegal appeared in the doorway, his face eager and unscarred by the things Ariana had seen. The first client is here. She's been waiting since we opened. Of course she had. The desperate always arrived early, carrying hope like a fragile thing they were terrified to break. But Ariana wasn't a lawyer anymore. The Bar Association had made that permanent. Her license revoked not for incompetence but for the sin of exposing their corruption. She was the director now, the face of the center, but she couldn't argue cases, couldn't stand in front of a judge and demand justice. She could only train others to do what she no longer could. Her phone buzzed with a video call. Maya's face filled the screen, bright-eyed and smiling from the private school 300 miles away where no one knew about blood-soaked courtrooms or fathers who died in handcuffs. The school where children drew pictures of normal things, dogs and houses and futures that didn't taste like ash. Ari, look what I made. Maya held up a drawing, and Ariana's breath caught. Do-hyun. Rendered in crayon with wings that stretched across the page, his smile the way Maya remembered it, gentle, sad, and impossibly kind. Above him, written in a child's careful script, my daddy, the angel. It's beautiful, baby. Ariana's voice threatened to crack. He would have loved it. I know. That's why I made it. Maya's certainty was absolute, untouched by doubt. Can you take it to him? When you visit. Today. I promise. The call ended, and Ariana stood in the center's marble lobby, paid for by Do-hyun's estate, built on the ruins of the system that had tried to destroy them both, and felt the weight of every promise she'd ever made pressing against her ribs. The cemetery was quiet, which felt wrong somehow. Do-hyun had lived loud, had died loud, and the silence over his grave seemed like an insult. Ariana set the cafeteria coffee cup on his headstone, the same terrible brew she used to serve in her stained apron, back when hiding had felt like survival instead of slow death. We opened today. She spoke to the marble like he could hear her, like death was just another room he'd walked into. 32 cases already. People who need help and can't afford the lawyers who'd actually fight for them. Her hand traced his name, carved deep. You'd hate the administrative work. All those spreadsheets. The wind shifted, and something white caught against the base of the headstone. An envelope, weathered but sealed, with her name written in Do-hyun's careful handwriting. Her hands shook as she tore it open. Ariana. If you're reading this, I'm gone. The tumor finally won, or the syndicate did, or maybe just the weight of everything I've done finally crushed what was left of me. Doesn't matter. What matters is this. You weren't a waitress pretending to be a lawyer. You were a warrior pretending to be invisible. You were my life, the proof that good people still exist in a world that punishes them for it. Take care of Maya. Teach her that justice isn't about winning. It's about fighting even when you know you'll lose. It's about standing up when everyone else sits down. It's about choosing light even when darkness is easier. Thank you for defending me. Thank you for seeing past the monster everyone said I was. Thank you for letting me be a father, even if just for a heartbeat. You saved me, Ariana. Not from prison or death, but from dying without meaning something to someone. Do-hyun. The letter blurred as tears finally came, ugly, gasping sobs that she'd held back for a year, held back through the center's construction, through Maya's nightmares, through the sentencing hearing where she'd watched Brennan and Webb receive life sentences that would never be enough. She taped Maya's drawing to the headstone, the angel's crayon wings bright against the grey marble. She misses you. Every day. She asks when you're coming back, and I don't know how to tell her that angels don't. Her voice shattered. But she finished the sentence in her head. Angels don't come back. They just watch from wherever they've gone, and hope we're strong enough to keep fighting. The woman waiting in the center's lobby was young, maybe 25, with bruises on her wrists that she kept trying to hide with too long sleeves. Her story spilled out in fragments: an abusive ex-husband with connections, restraining orders that weren't enforced, a legal system that protected men with money over women with none. Ariana had heard this story before. In different words, from different mouths, but always the same ending. Can you help me? Yes. Ariana's voice held no hesitation, no doubt. We can help you. The young paralegal stepped forward with intake forms, and Ariana saw herself in his eagerness. The girl she'd been before her father died, before corruption became her second language, before she learned that justice was something you bled for, not something you received. Ms. Vance. The paralegal's voice pulled her back. Should I schedule her consultation? Ariana looked at the woman, at the hope and terror warring in her eyes, and thought of Do-hyun in chains, of Maya crying for a father who'd never been hers by blood but had been hers by choice, of her own father bleeding out in an alley because he'd refused to compromise. The fight was never over. Evil didn't die when you put it in prison. It just found new faces, new victims, new ways to devour the vulnerable. But so did good. Schedule her, Ariana said. And tell the attorneys, we're taking this case pro bono. Through the window, the sun broke through clouds, casting light across the center's name. Maya's angel drawing was still visible on her phone screen. And somewhere, in a federal prison, Brennan and Webb woke to another day of consequences they'd spent 15 years believing would never come. The waitress who'd hidden for half her life was gone. The lawyer who'd been broken by the system was gone too. What remained was something harder, sharper, forged in blood and loss and the terrible knowledge that justice wasn't given. It was taken, fought for, bled for. Ariana Vance walked back into her center, into the light streaming through windows purchased with a dead man's final act of defiance, and understood the truth Do-hyun had tried to teach her. Even in darkness, we can choose to be light. And sometimes, if we're brave enough, that light is enough.